The ship hummed softly as it descended through the thin, electric blue atmosphere of Earth. Kylie adjusted the controls with a fluid, almost instinctive motion, her fingers dancing across the holographic panels. She had seen thousands of planets, wandered through nebulae that glowed like liquid fire, and walked on worlds where gravity bent in strange, disorienting ways. Yet Earth, her infrequent destination, still held a peculiar charm. It was familiar, but unlike the sterile perfection of the colonies, there was a rawness here, a pulse of life she had long been disconnected from. Her ship, the Astronomad, glided above sprawling cities, their skyscrapers like shards of glass catching the dying sunlight. The streets were alive with movement, vehicles hovering silently over roads, people moving in orchestrated chaos, unaware that a lone traveler from the stars was watching them. Kylie's silver hair reflected the fading light cascading down. Her back like a liquid metal curtain. Her piercing violet eyes scanned the horizon, noting every anomaly, every potential threat. Strength and grace were not just her attributes. They were survival tools honed over decades of solitude. Kylie's mission was routine, though she never allowed routine to dull her senses. Earth required inspection. Its planetary systems were being upgraded, its environmental regulators maintained. But even in the midst of duty, she allowed herself a rare indulgence, observing humanity. There was something about their persistence, their messy, beautiful resilience that called to her. Descending into the heart of a city, the ship settled in a secluded docking bay, hidden beneath a forested plateau. Kylie stepped out, her tall frame cutting an imposing figure in the shadowed landing chamber. Her suit, a sleek, adaptive armor of iridescent material, clung to her like a second skin, designed for both protection and mobility. Every movement was precise, deliberate, yet effortless. She was a predator in this new era, yet here she felt like a visitor in a world that had somehow grown both familiar and alien since the last time she had walked its streets. She moved through the city with purpose, her boots whispering against the polished metal of skywalks. Shops, cafes, and markets bustled with life around her. People barely noticed her, a strange blend of awe and indifference reflected in fleeting glances. She was accustomed to this, the veil of anonymity a necessary cloak for someone who carried the weight of countless worlds on her shoulders. And yet, despite her solitary existence, a spark of curiosity flickered inside her. Then she saw him, Chris. He was leaning against a streetlight, engrossed in a small mechanical device, his brow furrowed in concentration. Unlike the endless parade of faces around him, he seemed rooted in a quiet human determination. There was no grandeur in his presence, no cosmic elegance or technological aura, but something in the way he focused, the subtle set of his jaw, caught her attention. Kylie felt an unfamiliar tug, an anomaly in the carefully controlled rhythm of her heart. She had encountered beauty before, strength before, but never a quiet resonance that stirred her in ways she could not immediately define. As she walked past, their eyes met. Chris's gaze was unassuming but direct, carrying a warmth Kylie had long ago learned to suppress. She noticed the way his fingers moved over the device, the small smile that tugged at the corner of his lips when it whirred to life. It was a simple moment, yet in it, Kylie recognized a universe of possibilities she had almost forgotten existed. She faltered just slightly, enough to feel the weight of human emotion pressing against the armor she wore so well. A sudden ripple of alarm from her ship broke the moment. Sensors had detected an energy fluctuation, a minor anomaly, but in her world, minor anomalies could grow into catastrophic events. Kylie's instincts surged. She turned, her attention snapping from Chris to the task at hand, yet the impression he left lingered, like a soft glow in the vast darkness of space. For a moment she allowed herself a silent acknowledgement. Some worlds were worth more than a mission, some encounters more dangerous than any starship hazard. Kylie moved with purpose now, balancing duty and curiosity, the tension between them tightening with every step. Earth had welcomed her as it always did, beautiful, unpredictable, and undeniably alive. But this time it had also offered a spark, an unexpected connection that might, against all odds, change the course of her lonely, star-bound existence. And, somewhere in the midst of sprawling cityscapes and technological marvels, the encounter with Chris marked the beginning of a journey she could not yet foresee, a story that would ripple across galaxies, challenging everything she believed about herself and the world she traversed. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and crimson as Kylie navigated the narrow streets, her mind replaying the brief encounter with Chris. There was a quiet persistence in him that defied the chaos surrounding Earth's urban sprawl, a stubborn human tenacity she had long ago stopped expecting. She had traveled to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, survived hostile planets where the very atmosphere could tear flesh from bone, yet this simple, ordinary human had unsettled her in ways no alien threat ever had. She ducked into a small cafe tucked between two towering arcologies, a place she had passed countless times but never entered. The hum of conversation, the faint aroma of roasted beans, and the soft flicker of neon lights were soothing. For the first time in years, Kylie allowed herself to sit, to simply observe. She watched people laugh, argue, and touch each other, with fragile intimacy. In a way, it reminded her of the planets she had walked, each one unique, alive with its own ecosystem, its own rhythm. And yet here, everything was alive in a way that didn't require survival. And then she saw him again, Chris. He looked up from a small terminal he had tucked into the corner, his brow furrowed in the same way as before, concentration painting, his features with delicate strokes. When his eyes met hers across the room, she felt the same inexplicable tug, but this time it lingered longer. She rose from her seat and walked toward him, each step measured, deliberate, the echo of her boots muted against the polished floor. "Mind if I join you?" Kylie asked, her voice calm but carrying an unspoken intensity. Chris blinked, startled, but then smiled, a small, genuine curve of lips that seemed almost impossible against the backdrop of the bustling cafe. "Sure," he said, gesturing to the empty seat opposite him. "You, seem familiar. Haven't I seen you around before?" "Perhaps," Kylie replied with a faint smile, though she knew the answer was yes. She had watched him from above, silently, like a guardian of sorts. Or maybe it's just coincidence. Their conversation began cautiously, the way one tests the waters of an unknown sea. Chris spoke of ordinary things, his work maintaining city infrastructure, his love for old Earth literature, the way he often wandered the streets at night to observe the city's pulse. Kylie listened, intrigued by the simplicity and honesty in his words. She had spent decades among the stars, encountering advanced civilizations, rogue AI, and sentient energy beings, but the human capacity for small, persistent hope had always eluded her understanding. "You're not like anyone I've met," Chris admitted after a pause. "There's something about you, something powerful but gentle?" Kylie tilted her head, studying him. She had learned long ago to mask vulnerability, yet she allowed herself a small truth. "I've lived among worlds most people can't. Even imagine. Power is necessary for survival. Gentle is a luxury." Chris's eyes held hers steadily. "Maybe that's why it suits you." There was a fleeting moment, delicate and fragile, where words became unnecessary. A recognition passed between them, a spark that seemed to defy the logic Kylie usually relied upon. She had always been solitary, independent, and unyielding, a wanderer whose heart belonged to no one and no place. And yet, something about Chris unsettled the careful walls she had built, hinting at a vulnerability she hadn't allowed herself to feel in decades. Suddenly, a subtle vibration thrummed through her comlink. Kylie stiffened, instantly alert, the predator within her awakening. Her sensors had detected a minor energy anomaly nearby, a signal, faint but deliberate. Not dangerous, yet. Not now. But enough to remind her that even in the sanctuary of a city alive with ordinary life, the galaxy's threats were never far behind. Kylie stood, smoothing the fabric of her armor, her gaze lingering on Chris. "Something's come up. I need to check it." Chris frowned, but didn't argue. "You're always on guard, huh?" "Always," Kylie admitted, her voice softer than usual. "Even here." Before she left, Chris placed a hand gently over hers. The gesture was small, almost timid, yet it carried an unspoken message. Stay. A warmth spread through her chest, unfamiliar and disarming. Kylie wanted to resist, wanted to retreat into the safety of solitude, but the weight of that touch lingered, embedding itself into her consciousness like a seed waiting to grow. As she stepped into the night, the cityscape stretched endlessly before her, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Kylie's mind was divided. The anomaly she had detected demanded her attention, but so did the pull of something profoundly human, something unpredictable. Chris, for the first time in her starbound. Life, duty, and desire intersected, and she felt the thrill of uncertainty, terrifying, intoxicating, and irresistibly alive. And somewhere, watching from the shadows, Drevin Kairos' sensors picked up her movements, registering not only her location, but the unexpected variable, a human. He smiled, cold and calculating, recognizing the threat that Kylie herself had yet to fully understand. In that moment, Earth was no longer just a waypoint. It was the beginning of something far more complicated, far more dangerous, and far more human than Kylie had ever anticipated. The city's neon glow reflected off Kylie's armor as she moved through shadowed alleys, her senses sharpened to a razor's edge. The anomaly she had detected earlier hummed faintly across her comlink, an irregular pulse that didn't match any known energy signature. Kylie's violet eyes scanned the surroundings with instinctive precision. Her years of solitary exploration had taught her that in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, danger could arrive silently, without warning. But even here, on the streets of Earth, the same principle applied. She followed the pulse to an abandoned industrial sector, where towering metal frameworks stretched toward the sky like the skeletons of long-forgotten machines. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and rust. Kylie crouched behind a massive support beam, her armor melding into the shadows. Every motion, every breath was calculated. From experience, she knew anomalies rarely occurred by accident. Then she saw it. A figure cloaked in a shimmering, adaptive stealth field moved with precise, deliberate steps toward a small maintenance hub. Kylie's comlink displayed a faint, digital signature, unknown, highly advanced, and potentially lethal. Her heart, trained to remain unflinching, skipped a beat, a rarity she allowed herself only when faced with the genuinely unexpected. She slipped forward, a ghost among rusted machinery, her presence undetectable to even the most sophisticated sensors. The intruder stopped at the hub's main console, and with a few swift gestures, a cascade of holographic codes erupted from the terminal. Kylie recognized immediately the type of manipulation. Someone was attempting to override the city's energy grids, redirecting power from life-sustaining systems to an unknown destination. In other words, this was no mere hacker. This was an orchestrated act of sabotage. Kylie's fingers flexed and her armor adjusted to combat mode. She stepped from her hiding spot with the fluidity of a predator, and in a motion so fast it was almost imperceptible, she disabled the stealth field, revealing Drevin Kairos' operative in all its technological menace. The figure spun, but Kylie was already there, disarming and neutralizing the threat before any alarms could sound. The operator's eyes widened, recognizing the skill and precision of a warrior who had walked worlds they could not even fathom. "You're too late," the operative hissed through clenched teeth, though their voice carried more fear than confidence. "Draven, he's already in." Kylie's violet eyes narrowed. "Don't speak, not a word," she said, her voice a cold whisper that sent shivers down the operative's spine. With calculated efficiency, she bound the figure in electromagnetic cuffs, rendering them immobile. Her comlink vibrated again, a message encoded with high-level security clearance. Kylie scanned the feed. It was Chris. "Kylie. Something's wrong." His voice trembled over the line. "I saw a strange vessel above the city, unmarked, moving fast. I think it's—" Before he could finish, a pulse of energy erupted. In the distance, buildings trembled as the city's energy grids flickered erratically. Kylie's heart raced, not from fear, but from the thrill of a real threat, one that demanded her complete attention. She knew, without a doubt, that Draven Kiros was orchestrating something far beyond a simple act of sabotage. His reach was longer, his resources deadlier, and now Chris, innocent, ordinary Chris, was in the crosshairs. Kylie moved swiftly, her boots leaving no trace as she raced toward the source. She ducked beneath floating transport vehicles, vaulting over energized conduits, sparking dangerously, her every movement a blend of grace and lethal precision. When she reached the plaza where the pulse originated, she saw the unmarked vessel hovering silently, black as a void between stars. Its silhouette betrayed advanced weaponry, and at its core, a generator that pulsed with an ominous red light. Earth's energy siphoned, its power held hostage. Chris was there, standing frozen, awe and fear etched across his face. Kylie's instinct screamed at her to protect him, but she also knew the vessel's technology demanded strategic restraint. She grabbed his arm, pulling him behind cover. "Stay low. Move only when I tell you," she instructed, her voice sharp but calm, a lifeline in the chaos. As she observed the vessel, a flicker of recognition passed through her mind. This was Draven's signature, precise, intimidating, and psychologically calculated. Every move was meant to provoke, to test her. Kylie's lips curved in a faint, grim smile. He had underestimated her, as all adversaries did. She wasn't. Just a traveler, a lone wanderer. She was a force forged in the crucible of countless worlds, and she would not fail. For the first time, Kylie allowed herself to acknowledge a subtle, dangerous thrill. Earth was no longer a mere waypoint. It had become a battlefield, and Chris, the man who had unexpectedly entered her orbit, was now entwined in her fight. She had to protect him, not just for duty, but because something deep inside her had already begun to care. And as the red pulse from Draven's vessel grew stronger, Kylie's violet eyes glimmered with determination. Whatever the cost, she would face this threat head-on. She was Kylie, the galaxy's wandering sentinel, and no force, no matter how cunning or powerful, would take what she valued without consequence. The city trembled under the echo of energy pulses that rippled across the skyline, yet Kylie moved with a controlled grace, her violet eyes scanning every reflection, shadow, and flicker of light. The unmarked vessel hovered like a predator, its crimson glow cutting through the night. She knew this wasn't just an attack, it was a message, a demonstration of power, and behind it, waiting patiently, was Draven Kairos, orchestrating the chaos from some remote vantage. Chris crouched beside her behind a fractured pillar, his hand shaking as he clutched a small datapad he had retrieved during the initial incident. "Kylie, what is that thing?" he whispered, voice trembling but curious. "It doesn't look human." "It isn't," Kylie replied, her tone steady, almost detached, though a subtle undercurrent of concern threaded through it. She studied the vessel, noting the patterns in its energy emissions. Draven's technology, advanced enough to siphon a city's power, yet he left a trace. Amateur mistake. "He wants me to find it." Chris's eyes widened. He wants to play with you?" Kylie allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Something like that." Her armor shifted slightly, adaptive nanofibers tightening and responding to her posture. "We can't stay here. The generator's core is too unstable. If it overloads, it will level this sector." With a swift hand signal, she guided Chris through a series of shadowed corridors and maintenance shafts, their path illuminated only by the occasional sparks from broken circuits. Despite his fear, Chris followed without question, captivated not only by Kylie's skill, but by the unspoken confidence she radiated. There was a magnetism to her, an aura of strength tempered with rare glimpses of vulnerability, that drew him in, even as danger loomed on every side. They reached a vantage point overlooking the plaza, where the vessel had stationed itself. From here, Kylie could analyze the flow of energy, the pattern of siphoning. Her mind raced through calculations, memories of countless worlds, strategies tested in nebulous storms and asteroid fields. "This generator," she murmured, voice almost to herself, "it's ancient, technology beyond current human capability. Whoever built it knew how to manipulate planetary energy flows." Chris leaned closer, his curiosity outweighing his fear. "Ancient? How old?" Kylie's eyes narrowed as she traced a faint holographic projection from her suit's sensors. "Centuries, maybe more. It's the kind of tech humanity lost to history, or someone didn't want us to find." Her voice hardened slightly. "And now Draven has it. He's not just after control, he's after power. To manipulate entire worlds." Chris swallowed hard, realization dawning. "And you're going to stop him?" Kylie looked at him, her expression unreadable but intense. "I have to. But this is bigger than anything I've faced, and now it's personal." Her gaze flickered toward the faint shimmer of the cityscape, where the vessel loomed like a silent threat. Suddenly, her sensors detected movement, subtle, almost imperceptible, along the perimeter of the plaza. Additional drones, smaller but armed, began to converge on their position. Kylie tensed, every muscle coiling in anticipation. "Stay close," she ordered. Her tone left no room for argument. With a fluid motion, she activated her armor's stealth field, rendering them nearly invisible as they maneuvered through the fractured city blocks. Chris's hand brushed hers, a fleeting contact that sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. Kylie did not flinch, though her mind registered it. For someone like her, traveled, trained, and hardened by years of solitude, these tiny human connections were both dangerous and intoxicating. They reached an abandoned observation tower, its glass panels cracked and shimmering under the glow of the vessel. Kylie activated her suit's long-range scanners, mapping the energy field around the generator. Lines of force pulsed like veins across the city grid, feeding the unmarked vessel. She realized that if she could disrupt the core, at its source the city and perhaps Chris would be safe. But the risk was enormous. "Chris," she said softly, turning to him, "I need your help. Can you handle this?" Chris nodded, his usual uncertainty replaced by a steely resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes." Kylie allowed herself a rare, fleeting moment of gratitude. Here, in the midst of danger, she was not alone. The bond forming between them was fragile, but undeniable, a human anchor amidst the cold calculations of galactic survival. And in that instant she realized that Earth, with its familiar chaos and unpredictability, had given her more than just a mission. It had given her a reason to fight, not just for duty, but for something deeply, irrevocably human. As the first pulse of energy surged again from the generator, Kylie's violet eyes gleamed with determination. The city was alive, the threat imminent, and the stakes had never been higher. Draven had revealed only a fragment of his plan, but Kylie would be ready. And somewhere, she knew, the bond forming with Chris would prove just as powerful as any weapon she had wielded among the stars. Phi, battle for Earth and for something far more intimate, was only beginning. The night air of the city was electric, charged with tension as Kylie and Chris navigated the labyrinthine alleyways, their path illuminated by flickering neon and sporadic sparks from malfunctioning street grids. The pulse of Draven's vessel still thrummed faintly in the distance, a persistent reminder that danger was never far behind. Yet tonight, Kylie allowed herself to focus not only on survival, but on the subtle, unpredictable human connection forming beside her. Chris was quiet, his eyes scanning every shadow as if expecting the city itself to spring a trap. Despite the fear etched on his face, there was determination there, a quiet courage that Kylie had not anticipated. It was strange, infuriatingly so, that a human could evoke both frustration and fascination in someone who had walked among the stars, fought sentient storms, and faced creatures whose very presence could unravel sanity. "Kylie," Chris whispered, "why are you always so calm?" She didn't answer immediately. Calm was a necessity, not a trait. "Because panic gets you killed," she said finally, her tone clipped but not unkind. "Every world I've visited teaches the same lesson. Instinct is valuable, but control is everything." Chris nodded, absorbing her words, though his curiosity remained undiminished. "Even with what we're facing?" Kylie glanced at him briefly, her violet eyes catching the dim glow of a streetlight. "Especially with this?" She did not elaborate, because to explain the magnitude of Draven's threat in full detail would risk overwhelming him, or worse, distracting him when focus was vital. Instead, she shifted her attention to the shadows, noting the faint shimmer of stealth drones converging toward their location. "They're close," she murmured. With a flick of her wrist, her armor's adaptive interface displayed a holographic map of the immediate sector, highlighting the precise locations and trajectories of the incoming drones. "We'll need to move fast. You trust me?" Chris swallowed hard, then nodded. "I do. I trust you." The words, simple and unassuming, carried a weight that Kylie did not immediately acknowledge. She led him through a series of maintenance tunnels, each turn a calculated choice to minimize exposure, while maximizing mobility. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and scorched metal, the city itself trembling as Draven's energy siphons rippled through the grid. They emerged onto a rooftop overlooking the plaza, and Kylie crouched, scanning the vessel with her enhanced vision. The unmarked ship remained suspended in the air, its crimson core pulsing ominously. Around it, drones patrolled in precise patterns, their targeting systems already locking in. Kylie's mind raced. Strategy, countermeasures, contingencies. Every decision she made could mean life or death for both of them. Chris hesitated. "Kylie, we can't just fight them all, can we?" Her gaze softened for a fraction of a second, a rare vulnerability she allowed herself only in his presence. "Not alone," she admitted, "but with focus and timing, we can level the playing field." She leapt, landing silently on a lower ledge, signaling Chris to follow. They moved like shadows, closing the distance to the drones with precision. Kylie's movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. A sweep of her arm to disable targeting arrays, a sudden dash to avoid laser fire, her body and armor harmonizing in perfect synchronization. Chris, though inexperienced, adapted quickly under her guidance, following her instructions with a mix of fear and awe. One drone broke formation, its targeting system locking onto Chris. Kylie's eyes narrowed. With a surge of calculated force, she launched herself forward, intercepting the strike midair. Energy flared, a brief arc of brilliant light, and the drone crashed to the rooftop in a shower of sparks. Chris stared at her, breathless. You're incredible." Kylie's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Stay close. This isn't over." They pressed forward, weaving through the chaos, disabling drones with coordinated precision. The bond between them strengthened with every shared risk, every brush of danger, every fleeting glance that spoke louder than words. Kylie had walked alone among the stars for decades. Yet here, in the midst of peril, she felt an unfamiliar sense of trust, fragile, human, and intoxicating. Finally, they reached a vantage point where Kylie could hack into one of the city's auxiliary power nodes. redirecting energy to destabilize the vessel's siphon. Chris assisted, his hands trembling, but determined, following her precise instructions. With a final keystroke, the pulse of the vessel faltered, its crimson glow dimming. Kylie exhaled, allowing herself the barest hint of relief. She glanced at Chris, his face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the interface. "You did well," she said quietly, a note of genuine warmth in her voice. Chris smiled, a mixture of pride and disbelief. "We did it together." Kylie's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. For the first time in years, she realized that solitude was no longer absolute. And somewhere beyond the dim city lights and the remnants of Draven's threat, a fragile, unexpected bond had begun, a connection that might one day rival the stars themselves. But even in the brief calm, Kylie knew the battle was far from over. Draven had not revealed his full hand, and the night was alive with possibilities, both dangerous and unpredictable. And Kylie, with Chris at her side, would face whatever came next with the unyielding strength that had defined her across countless worlds. The city skyline glimmered under the cold light of a crescent moon, yet the air was heavy with tension, each shadow feeling as though it might conceal an unseen threat. Kylie moved silently through the fractured streets, her violet eyes scanning every surface, every reflection, every flicker of movement. The pulse of Draven's vessel lingered in the distance like a menacing heartbeat, a constant reminder that the threat had not vanished, it had only evolved. Chris followed close behind, his breathing measured but tense. The events of the previous night still weighed on him, a combination of exhilaration and fear. He had seen Kylie at her most lethal, her abilities honed through decades of survival among worlds most humans could not fathom. And yet, beneath that armor, beneath the Predator's precision, he glimpsed something else, something raw and human, a fleeting vulnerability she rarely allowed anyone to witness. "Kylie!" Chris's voice trembled slightly, breaking the tense silence. Do you think he'll come after me?" Her gaze flicked toward him, sharp and assessing. "Draven Kiros doesn't target indiscriminately. He targets leverage, and right now, you are leverage." She paused, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I cannot let him harm you, Chris, not because of duty, because of what I've begun to feel." Chris's eyes widened, but before he could respond, a surge of energy lit the skyline. Red arcs of electricity arced across buildings, igniting the remnants of city infrastructure with a crackling fury. Draven had escalated. The unmarked vessel had returned, larger and more formidable, its core pulsating like a malevolent heart. Kylie's mind raced. She assessed, calculated, and adapted as she had countless times before. The drones that accompanied the vessel swarmed, with precision, their weapons locking onto targets with a lethal efficiency. "Move," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Her armor shifted seamlessly, transforming from stealth to combat mode in an instant. They darted between crumbling structures, Kylie disabling drones with fluid strikes, her movements a deadly dance of speed and accuracy. Chris followed, his determination growing, adapting to the rhythm she set, trusting her instincts implicitly. Suddenly, one of Draven's larger drones broke from formation, its energy cannon locking onto Chris. Kylie's heart surged, but her instincts were faster. She leapt, intercepting the blast with a precise strike of her gauntlet, sending the drone tumbling into a pile of debris. Sparks erupted, lighting the alley in eerie patterns. "Kylie!" Chris shouted, wide-eyed. "You saved me again." Her lips curved faintly. "Stay close. No mistakes." As they pressed forward, Kylie detected a new signal, an internal beacon, hidden deep within the vessel's core. Draven wasn't just siphoning energy. He was tracking them, manipulating the battlefield. A twinge of anger flashed across Kylie's eyes. This was no longer merely a confrontation of strength. It was psychological warfare, Draven wanted to break her, to make her falter. They reached an abandoned communication tower where Kylie paused to formulate a plan. The structure was precarious, but it provided the elevation she needed to access the vessel's energy flow. "Chris," she said, her voice low but steady, "I need you to feed me the city's auxiliary grid data. I can reroute power through it to destabilize the vessel, but I'll need precision." Chris nodded, determination hardening his features. "I've got this. I trust you, Kylie." The pair moved as one, a synchronized force of calculated precision. Chris manipulated the data streams, rerouting city power, while Kylie interfaced with her suit's systems, aligning frequencies and pulses to create a disruption in the vessel's siphoning core. The red glow flickered, faltered, and surged back, a living thing resisting their intervention. Then, an unexpected alert flashed across Kylie's interface. A cloaked figure had breached the tower's perimeter. Draven's elite operative, faster and deadlier than the drones, moved with lethal intent toward Chris. Kylie's body reacted before her mind fully registered the threat. With a blur of motion, she intercepted the attacker mid-air, twisting, striking, and disarming with brutal elegance. The operative collapsed, incapacitated. Chris stared at her, breathless. How are you so—" Kylie's violet eyes met his. "I am who I am, Chris, but this, you being here, changes everything." The red pulse from the vessel surged violently, shaking the city like a predator asserting dominance. Kylie's fingers flew over her suit's interface, recalibrating, redirecting. Sparks and energy arcs danced across the plaza below as the vessel faltered. In that moment, as chaos erupted around them, Kylie realized something profound. She could face galaxies alone, but the connection she shared with Chris, trust, courage, vulnerability, made them a force unlike any other. And Draven, despite his cunning and power, had underestimated the resilience of a bond forged in the crucible of danger and human emotion. The city trembled, the vessel faltered, and Kylie, standing tall amidst the chaos, knew the battle was far from over, but for the first time she felt that victory, and perhaps something even more profound, was within reach. The city skyline had become a battlefield of shadows and light, a chaotic symphony of crumbling buildings and surging energy arcs. Kylie crouched atop a fractured rooftop, violet eyes narrowing as she analyzed the unmarked vessel hovering above. The city. Its crimson core pulsed with ominous rhythm, sending tremors through the urban landscape. Draven Kiros had made his move, and this time the confrontation was inevitable. Chris crouched beside her, every instinct heightened, his hands gripping a datapad that hummed with the auxiliary energy feeds Kylie had instructed him to monitor. I don't know if I can keep up with you," he admitted, voice tight but resolute. Kylie's gaze softened briefly. "You're keeping up. More than that. You're learning to think like I do. That's the edge we have." She paused, scanning the vessel's energy patterns. "But now, we have to finish this." With a decisive nod, Kylie launched herself across the gap between rooftops, landing with the silent precision of a hunter. Chris followed, adapting as best he could, his steps faltering only once, before Kylie steadied him with a gentle, firm hand. The contact was brief, but charged, an unspoken affirmation that whatever came next, they faced it together. Below them, the streets writhed with chaos. Draven's drones converged, firing concentrated energy pulses that tore through concrete and steel alike. Kylie moved like water, fluid and unrelenting, neutralizing each threat with lethal efficiency. Chris mirrored her movements, guided by her commands, learning the rhythm of combat, even as adrenaline and fear surged through him. Then the vessel opened its core hatch, revealing Draven himself. He hovered mid-air, cloaked in advanced gravtech armor that shimmered like liquid metal, his eyes sharp and calculating, locked onto Kylie. "You've grown predictable, Kylie," he intoned, his voice amplified by the vessel's systems. "I expected more ingenuity from a wanderer of worlds. Kylie's violet eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance igniting within her. And I expected more subtlety from you, Draven. But some lessons are learned only through confrontation. With that, he activated a pulse cannon, sending a wave of energy that shattered the street below. Kylie dove, rolling through debris, pulling Chris to cover. Sparks and shards rained around them, yet she rose again, calculating, precise. The very embodiment of combat-born grace. Chris's voice trembled. Kylie, he's too powerful. Not if we work together, Kylie replied, her tone fierce but steady. Trust me. Focus on the energy flows. I'll handle the rest. They split roles seamlessly. Chris manipulated the auxiliary grids, rerouting surges and creating micro-disturbances within the vessel's siphon system. Kylie engaged directly, striking drones with calculated ferocity, her armor adapting with every motion, deflecting energy blasts with precise timing. Draven countered, deploying advanced drones and energy barriers, a relentless torrent of strategy and firepower. As the battle intensified, Kylie realized that Draven's true aim was psychological, to isolate her, to force her into reckless decisions. But she had survived centuries, traversed worlds that demanded adaptability and cunning. Her mind raced, devising a plan not just of force, but of misdirection. She glanced at Chris, who met her gaze with unwavering trust. That small, human connection, fragile and profound, was her unexpected advantage. Ready, she whispered. Chris nodded. Ready. Kylie surged forward, a blur of motion, drawing Draven's attention while Chris manipulated the grids below. Sparks flew, drones exploded, and the crimson core flickered. The city seemed to hold its breath as energy arcs danced chaotically, controlled only by their combined precision. Finally, with a decisive strike, Kylie shattered one of the vessel's stabilizing pylons, sending a shockwave through the system. The core faltered, pulsating violently. Draven's armor flared with defensive energy, but the disruption was irreversible. The unmarked vessel groaned, tilting perilously as its siphon failed. Draven's eyes met Kylie's, a flash of disbelief and perhaps respect crossing his features. You've adapted, he said, his voice tinged with both frustration and grudging admiration. Kylie's lips curved into a faint, victorious smile. Adaptation keeps you alive, and sometimes it wins wars. As the vessel destabilized, energy discharged unpredictably, forcing Kylie to dive and shield Chris, the blast knocking both to the rooftop's edge. Dust and sparks filled the air, yet when it cleared, the vessel was retreating, its systems critically damaged. Draven's escape was begrudging, tactical. He would return, but not today. Chris exhaled, trembling with a mixture of relief and, well, Kylie, we did it. Kylie stood surveying the city, the violet gleam in her eyes reflecting triumph and exhaustion. Today, yes, but tomorrow, the fight continues, and he will come back stronger. Chris stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, a fleeting electric contact that spoke volumes. Kylie did not pull away. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge that amid the battles, the chaos, and the endless expanse of the galaxy, something profoundly human had rooted itself in her heart. And for the first time in centuries, Kylie realized that survival alone was no longer her only purpose. There was something worth defending, not just worlds, but the fragile, luminous bonds that made life, against all odds, worth fighting for. The city lay in uneasy calm beneath them, a silent witness to their victory and the storms yet to come. And as Kylie gazed toward the stars, she understood with certainty the true battle had only just begun. The city was alive with tension, a fragile calm hanging over fractured streets and half-lit alleys. Kylie and Chris moved with deliberate caution, their footsteps silent against the cracked concrete. Even after the victory over Draven's vessel, the air thrummed with residual energy, a reminder that their battle was far from over. Draven's retreat was not surrender, it was preparation, a silent recalibration for a strike that would leave no room for error. Kylie's violet eyes scanned every shadow, every reflection, analyzing patterns of movement, residual energy signatures, and the subtle traces of Draven's remaining operatives. "He's reorganizing," she muttered, voice low and steady. "This city isn't safe. We need to follow him to the source." Chris swallowed, glancing at her. "The source? You mean where he's hiding?" Kylie nodded. "Exactly. He's not just a tactician. He's an architect of chaos. He has a stronghold, a place where he can manipulate energy and strategize without interruption. If we can locate it, we can end this, or at least gain the upper hand." They moved through the skeletal remains of the industrial sector, where abandoned machinery towered like the bones of a forgotten world. Sparks and flickers of residual energy traced the outlines of the path ahead, revealing subtle signs of Draven's manipulation. Kylie's fingers brushed the interface of her armor, scanning and decoding the faint traces. "Here," she whispered, pointing to a barely visible conduit leading underground. "This is the entry to his labyrinth." Chris's eyes widened. "Underground? How deep?" Kylie's lips pressed into a firm line. "Deep enough that most would never find it, and dangerous enough that even I have to be careful." Descending into the labyrinth, the air shifted, cooler, metallic, and thick with the hum of concentrated energy. The walls were lined with conduits pulsing faintly in red, evidence of Draven's siphoning systems at work. Kylie's senses heightened, every instinct screaming that the deeper they went, the closer they were to a confrontation that could change everything. They reached a chamber that opened into a vast network of corridors, twisting and turning in impossible configurations. Holographic projections flickered along the walls, mapping pathways and defensive nodes designed to disorient any intruder. Kylie crouched, her mind racing, calculating. "This is it," she murmured. "We have to navigate carefully. One misstep, and the alarms will trigger every defense system in this complex." Chris glanced at the projections, awe and fear etched into his features. "You've done this before, right?" Kylie's violet eyes flickered with faint amusement, though there was no humor in her tone. "I've navigated worse. Focus on me, follow my lead, and you'll be fine." They moved like shadows, stepping over pressure-sensitive panels, avoiding automated turrets, and bypassing security systems, with a combination of Kylie's knowledge and Chris's precision. Each corridor twisted unpredictably, the labyrinth a psychological as well as physical challenge. The closer they approached the core, the stronger the hum of Draven's energy became, a pulsating rhythm that vibrated through the walls and floors. Suddenly, an alarm flared, a high-pitched wail that reverberated through the corridors. A swarm of drones descended, their targeting systems locking in. Kylie acted instantly, moving with lethal grace, disabling drones with precise strikes and energy pulses. Chris followed her commands, assisting where he could, his confidence growing under her guidance. "Kylie," he shouted over the din, "there are too many." "Then we create a path," she yelled back, her voice cutting through chaos. With calculated force, Kylie activated her armor's overload sequence, releasing a pulse that temporarily disabled the swarm. Sparks showered around them, illuminating her determined face, and Chris could see the intensity in her violet eyes, a mixture of focus, ferocity, and something more human, more vulnerable than he had ever seen. They pressed onward, deeper into the labyrinth, until they reached a massive chamber where Draven awaited, his armor gleaming and his eyes calculating. "Impressive," he said, his voice amplified by the chamber's resonance. "You've made it farther than anyone before. But the labyrinth is only the beginning." Kylie's posture was taut, her fingers flexing over the interfaces of her suit. "Then let's see if your arrogance matches your cunning, Draven." Chris stepped beside her, trembling slightly, but resolute. "We're not backing down." Draven's lips curved in a thin, sinister smile. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. The labyrinth had led them to its heart, and the confrontation they had anticipated for weeks was finally here. Sparks of energy danced along the walls, the hum of systems vibrating through the air. Kylie and Chris stood together, ready to face the storm that Draven had built around himself. And in that tense, electrified silence, the stakes were clear. The city, the labyrinth, and perhaps even their lives hung in the balance. Kylie's violet eyes met Chris's. "Stay close. Trust me. We'll end this." Chris nodded, gripping his datapad like a lifeline. "I trust you, Kylie." The labyrinth trembled, and the first wave of Draven's full assault surged toward them. The chamber stretched endlessly before them, a cathedral of steel and pulsing energy that seemed almost alive. Kylie and Chris paused at the threshold, taking in the sheer scale of Draven Kiros's lair. The walls shimmered with a faint red hue, energy conduits crisscrossing like veins through the structure. Sparks danced in midair, illuminating the vast machinery that powered the labyrinth's defenses. Every step deeper was a gamble, every movement watched, calculated, and anticipated by the architect of chaos himself. Kylie's violet eyes scanned the chamber with surgical precision. "This is it," she whispered, her voice calm but tense. "This is where he consolidates everything. The drones, the siphons, the traps. We can't afford a misstep here." Chris swallowed, his hands gripping the datapad tightly. I see why you've been so cautious. This place it's insane." Kylie's lips pressed into a thin line. "Insane is relative. Focus, Chris. We stick together, and we move as one. I'll lead. Watch, learn, and react." They stepped into the chamber. Immediately the floor beneath them shifted, a subtle but unmistakable movement that triggered a cascade of energy pulses along the walls. Drones erupted from hidden compartments, moving in synchronized patterns, weapons charging with a deadly hum. Kylie's body responded instinctively. With fluid precision, she activated her armor's combat matrix, weaving through the drones, her strikes precise and lethal. Energy sparks collided with metal as she dismantled each threat with the grace and ferocity of a predator. Chris followed her instructions, directing energy flows via the datapad to disrupt the labyrinth's systems. Sparks flared as power nodes overloaded, creating momentary gaps in the drone's formations. "Kylie, I think I can help," he shouted, exhilaration and fear mingling in his voice. "You are helping," Kylie called back, her movements a blur. "Keep feeding me the energy streams. Every pulse counts." As they advanced, the hum of the vessel above intensified. Kylie's eyes flicked upward, noting the subtle shifts in energy distribution. It was a feedback loop connected directly to the labyrinth. Draven was no longer content with drones. He was orchestrating a symphony of destruction, a trap designed to crush them physically and mentally. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Draven himself, his armor gleamed with malevolent brilliance, every movement precise, predatory. "Impressive, Hois," he said, voice echoing through the chamber. "But you're both overextended. The labyrinth is mine." Kylie's violet eyes locked onto his. "Not anymore. Today, it ends." Draven lunged, energy blades extending from his gauntlets. Kylie moved faster, sidestepping the attack with a leap that defied gravity. Sparks erupted as the blades grazed the edge of her armor, but she countered with a precise strike that sent Draven staggering. Chris's eyes widened. "Kylie, stay focused," she barked. She pivoted, using Draven's momentary imbalance to disable a nearby energy node, causing a surge that threw multiple drones off balance. Chris acted immediately, redirecting the disrupted energy to create a shield that deflected a volley of laser fire. Draven recovered quickly, his eyes narrowing. Clever, but not enough. He activated a secondary energy conduit, sending a pulse that shook the chamber violently. Kylie's legs absorbed the impact, her body steadying, her mind calculating a counter-strike. "Chris, now!" she shouted. Following her instructions, Chris redirected the auxiliary grids, feeding a concentrated pulse toward the vessel's siphon conduit within the labyrinth. Sparks erupted in a brilliant cascade, the floor trembling beneath their feet. Draven roared, in frustration as his systems faltered. Kylie seized the moment, closing the distance with a surge of speed that left even Draven off guard. She struck at the heart of his armor, a precision blow that overloaded the internal conduits. Energy arcs danced chaotically as Draven staggered back, his control slipping. Chris breathed heavily, eyes wide. We're actually doing it. Kylie's gaze softened ever so slightly. We're close. Don't falter now. With a final coordinated effort, Kylie and Chris directed a massive energy surge into the labyrinth's core. The pulse reverberated through the chamber, destabilizing Draven's systems completely. The drones collapsed, sparks flying as they short-circuited, and the vessel above shuddered violently. Draven himself was thrown back, armor smoking, his eyes wide with disbelief. Kylie stood tall, breathing steady despite the chaos. Chris approached, awe and admiration clear in his expression. You're incredible, he said softly. Kylie's violet eyes met his. We did this together. As the labyrinth trembled and the red glow faded, Kylie realized the truth she had avoided for too long. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers beyond imagination, but it was not just survival. That mattered. It was the connections, the trust, the bonds forged in the heat of battle. With Chris by her side, she felt something she had not felt in centuries, a hope, fragile yet undeniable, that even amidst chaos, light could prevail. The labyrinth lay. In ruin around them, Draven's defeat temporary but significant. Kylie knew the war was far from over, yet for the first time she allowed herself to feel more than strategy and survival. She allowed herself to feel that, together, they could face anything, even the stars themselves. The labyrinth trembled under the weight of destruction, but Kylie's mind raced faster than the crumbling steel around her. Red energy arcs flickered violently across the chamber, illuminating the jagged walls in an ominous glow. Draven Kiros was not defeated. He was calculating, adapting, and preparing his final strike. Every pulse of power reverberated through the structure, a reminder that the stakes had never been higher. Chris stumbled slightly beside her, eyes wide as he tried to keep pace. Kylie, I don't know if I can. Kylie's hand shot out, gripping his arm with steady force. You can. Trust me. Right now your focus isn't fear, it's strategy. Follow my lead. Every move matters. Her violet eyes gleamed with an intensity that cut through the chaos, a mixture of ferocity and calm clarity, honed from lifetimes surviving worlds most humans would never see. From the shadows, Draven emerged, his armor gleaming like liquid metal, energy conduits pulsing ominously along his limbs. You've caused me inconvenience, he said, voice resonant with controlled fury. But now, you will pay for every misstep. Kylie's lips curved into a faint smirk. Every misstep is a lesson, Draven, and today you're about to learn one too. Without warning, Draven launched a volley of energy projectiles, tearing through the remnants of the chamber with blinding speed. Kylie pivoted with the grace of a predator, dodging each strike while sending her own counterwaves of kinetic energy to intercept drones that surged around them. Sparks and fire danced across the room as metal collided with light, each movement a deadly ballet of strategy and instinct. Chris's hands moved rapidly over his datapad, rerouting the labyrinth's residual energy to create shields and diversions. Kylie, I can destabilize his core if we do it now, she shouted, twisting midair to strike a drone that had broken through their defenses. Her armor flared as kinetic pulses rippled from her gauntlets, sending the drone into a cascade of sparks. Good. Keep it steady, Chris. Draven's eyes narrowed as he analyzed the disruption. Predictable, he hissed, activating a hidden energy conduit that caused the floor beneath them to shift and fracture. Kylie barely leapt to safety, dragging Chris with her. The labyrinth itself seemed to respond to Draven's will, a living maze designed to isolate and destroy. Breathing steadily despite the chaos, Kylie assessed her options. The vessel above thrummed with increasing intensity, synchronizing with Draven's energy network. "He's trying to collapse the entire system on us," she muttered, her voice tight but controlled. "If we don't act quickly, this chamber, and maybe the city, will be destroyed." Chris's gaze met hers, determination mingling with fear. "Then let's finish this together." Kylie's violet eyes softened for a moment, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. "Together?" she echoed, her voice low but resolute. They synchronized their movements with near-perfect precision. Chris manipulated the grids, directing a controlled surge toward the vessel's siphon conduit, while Kylie navigated the labyrinth's treacherous terrain, striking drones, disabling energy nodes, and distracting Draven. The final confrontation was immediate and visceral. Draven lunged, energy blades slashing with lethal intent. Kylie met each strike with calculated parries and counters, her gauntlets flaring with concentrated energy. Sparks flew, illuminating her determined face and the faint trace of emotion she could no longer deny. Fear for Chris, fury at Draven, and an undeniable pull toward something deeper, something human amidst the chaos. Chris acted with newfound confidence, feeding precise energy pulses into the labyrinth systems, weakening Draven's conduit networks. "Now, Kylie!" he shouted. Kylie's body surged with energy, every movement amplified by her suit and her unyielding determination. She closed the distance to Draven, striking at the heart of his armor with a concentrated blast. Systems overloaded, energy arcs spiraled chaotically, and Draven screamed in frustration as his defenses crumbled. The chamber shook violently as the vessel above faltered, destabilized by the synchronized attack. Draven staggered, eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible! You—" Kylie's violet gaze met his, unwavering. Not impossible, inevitable. With a final surge, she and Chris directed a concentrated energy pulse through the labyrinth's core. The vessel convulsed, energy arcs exploding in brilliant cascades. Sparks rained down, illuminating Kylie's face as she shielded Chris, their bodies a silhouette of unity and strength. Draven's armor fractured, systems collapsing. The labyrinth shuddered one last time before silence fell, broken only by the faint hum of residual energy. Kylie stood amidst the ruin, breath steady, violet eyes gleaming with victory and exhaustion. Chris looked at her, awe written across his face. We actually did it, together." Kylie allowed herself a rare smile, touching his arm lightly. "Yes, together. But remember, the galaxy is vast, and the stars are never truly safe. We fight, and we survive. Together." Above them, the night sky stretched endless and infinite, a reminder that the universe held dangers beyond imagination, but also, perhaps, hope. And for Kylie, for the first time in centuries of wandering and battle, hope was not just survival. Hope was connection, trust, and the luminous possibility of a future worth fighting for. The labyrinth lay in ruins, Draven defeated for now. Yet, in the shadows of the cosmos, Kylie knew that their story was far from over. But with Chris by her side, she was ready to face whatever the galaxy had left to throw at them. The labyrinth was quiet now, but the silence felt unnatural, oppressive, a lingering reminder of Draven's final assault. Kylie and Chris stood amidst the wreckage, the faint glow of residual energy casting jagged shadows across fractured walls and sparking conduits. The city above, once chaotic and alive, seemed almost hushed in anticipation, as though holding its breath after the storm. Kylie crouched beside a shattered energy node, running a gloved hand along its scorched surface. Violet eyes scanned the wreckage, calculating. Though Draven had been defeated, for now, she could sense the ripple of consequences spreading through the city's power grids. Even a partial collapse could destabilize entire sectors if left unattended. "We need to stabilize this quickly," she said, voice calm but urgent. "Otherwise, the aftermath could be worse than the battle itself." Chris moved beside her, still catching his breath. I never realized how much energy he had been siphoning. It's incredible and terrifying." Kylie glanced at him, a faint wry smile touching her lips. "Incredible, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. But it's also evidence that he underestimated us. He assumed I'd act alone. He didn't account for what happens when someone learns to trust and fight with another." They moved methodically through the labyrinth, stabilizing core nodes, rerouting failing conduits, and neutralizing volatile energy surges. Chris's hands moved with increasing confidence over the datapad, following Kylie's commands as if guided by instinct. With every pulse he redirected, every system he recalibrated, Kylie could see the transformation, not just of the machinery, but of Chris himself. He was becoming a partner, not a bystander. Eventually they reached the central core chamber, the very heart of Draven's lair. The vessel above still hovered, fractured but intact, flickering dangerously with unstable energy. Kylie's eyes narrowed. "This is it," she whispered. "We finish stabilizing the labyrinth, and then we make sure that vessel can never threaten the city or us again." Chris swallowed, glancing at the vessel. How do we do that?" Kylie's lips pressed into a determined line, with precision and with trust. "One wrong move and it's over for both of us. Follow my lead exactly." Together, they orchestrated a synchronized attack. Kylie navigated the hazardous terrain, disabling automated defenses and creating channels for energy to flow safely. Chris manipulated the grids, directing the residual power surges into controlled feedback loops. Sparks exploded around them, but their timing was flawless. Every pulse, every diversion, every countermeasure was calculated with unerring precision as they worked. Chris couldn't resist glancing at Kylie. You're incredible," he admitted softly, awe mingling with something deeper, something vulnerable. Kylie's violet eyes met his, a rare softness in their depths. "I survive. That's what I do, but surviving is nothing without someone to trust, Chris. Remember that?" The vessel convulsed above them, energy flaring unpredictably, and Kylie realized the final sequence had begun. With a swift series of motions, she overloaded the siphon conduits connected to the vessel. Sparks erupted like mini supernovae, and the chamber trembled violently. Chris adjusted the energy flows, stabilizing the core just enough to prevent catastrophic collapse. Draven's voice crackled through the vessel's remnants, distorted and enraged. "You cannot win forever?" Kylie's smirk was cold and precise. "I don't need to win forever. I just need to survive and protect what matters." The vessel's core convulsed one last time before imploding in a controlled collapse, energy discharging harmlessly into the labyrinth's newly stabilized conduits. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of residual energy slowly dissipating. Kylie stood tall, eyes scanning the chamber, muscles tense but composed. Chris exhaled heavily, leaning against a scorched wall, exhaustion and relief mingling in equal measure. For a long moment they simply stood there, two figures framed by the ruins of chaos, connected by trust, forged in battle and danger. Kylie's gaze drifted upward, toward the fractured skylight where remnants of the city's stars glimmered through the dust. "The galaxy is vast," she said softly, "and the threats are endless. But we can face them. Together." Chris smiled, faintly, a mixture of awe and something unspoken. "Together," he echoed. Kylie allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I thought I'd spend my life wandering alone, facing the stars without connection. But now?" Her gaze met his, fierce and tender all at once. "Now I know that survival isn't enough. We have to fight for more. For bonds, for hope, for For each other. Chris stepped closer, tentative, yet resolute. Then we keep going, no matter what comes next. The labyrinth, once a place of terror and control, now seemed almost tranquil, a testament to their resilience and unity. Outside, the city awaited, fractured but alive, a silent witness to the courage of two souls willing to face the impossible. And as Kylie and Chris emerged from the ruins hand in hand, violet eyes glinting with determination, it was clear that their journey was far from over. The stars were endless, the universe unpredictable, but together they were unstoppable. In the quiet aftermath, one truth was undeniable. They had faced the edge of oblivion and survived. And in that survival, they had discovered something infinitely more powerful than any technology or weapon, the unwavering strength of connection, trust, and heart. The sky above the city burned with the remnants of the battle, a kaleidoscope of sparks, drifting debris, and streaks of energy that painted the horizon in violent hues. Kylie and Chris stood at the edge of the devastated labyrinth, gazing upward, at the vessel still suspended precariously, flickering like a dying star. Draven Kiros had retreated before, but now Kylie could feel it in her bones. This was the culmination, the final confrontation. Everything, all their trials, had led to this moment. Her violet eyes narrowed, scanning the sky. "He's not hiding anymore," she said, her voice low and steady. "He's coming out for the final strike." Chris tightened his grip on the energy stabilizer, hands trembling, but resolve unshaken. "Are we ready for this? Together?" Kylie's smirk was fierce, a mixture of confidence and unyielding determination. "We've been ready since the moment we stepped into his labyrinth. Trust me and follow my lead." The vessel descended rapidly, tearing through the remaining debris. Draven emerged, his armor now fully fused with unstable energy, glowing with lethal intensity. "So predictable," he hissed, eyes blazing. "You think you've survived me? But the galaxy bends to those who embrace chaos." Kylie stepped forward, her armor flaring with violet light. "I don't bend, I fight. And today, you lose." Draven lunged, energy tendrils whipping through the air like serpents. Kylie moved like liquid motion, dodging, countering, striking. Sparks flew as her gauntlets collided with Draven's energy. Blades, each strike resonating with deadly precision. Chris followed her movements, directing energy flows from the stabilizer, creating temporary shields and amplifying Kylie's attacks. "You've grown strong," Draven snarled, "but you underestimate the core's power." Suddenly, the vessel's core surged violently, the entire structure shaking as if alive. Kylie's violet eyes tracked the energy pulse, analyzing, calculating. "Chris, I need you to overload the auxiliary grids now!" Chris's fingers danced across the interface, sweat beading on his brow. "On it! Hold on, Kylie!" Energy streams converged, creating a dazzling light that bathed the chamber. Sparks and arcs danced like miniature stars as Kylie surged forward, propelled by a combination of her armor's kinetic amplification and sheer willpower. Draven roared, trying to repel her advance, but Kylie's strikes were relentless. Each blow dismantled conduits, fractured energy fields, and chipped away at his defenses. Chris's careful modulation of the grids amplified her attacks, turning the vessel's own energy against its master. "You cannot," Draven hissed, his voice cracking with desperation. "I am eternal." "You are," Kylie countered, "but even eternity has a limit, and that limit is today." With one final, precise strike, Kylie directed the last surge of energy into the vessel's core. The labyrinth trembled violently, energy arcs exploding in all directions. Draven screamed as the conduit overload consumed his armor, flames and sparks cascading outward in a blinding storm. Kylie shielded Chris instinctively, violet eyes blazing with unyielding determination. When the light faded, silence fell, broken only by the faint hum of residual energy. The vessel was no more Draven. Kairos defeated, his armor reduced to molten remnants. Kylie stood amidst the ruin, chest heaving but posture unbroken, eyes scanning the chamber for any sign of residual threat. Chris exhaled, leaning against a fractured wall. We did it. We actually did it. Kylie allowed herself a rare, brief smile, the first genuine one in centuries. Yes, together, but remember this. Victory isn't just about surviving. It's about what we choose to protect. He nodded, eyes softening as he looked at her. And I choose us. I choose you. For a moment, the chaos of the labyrinth, the shattered city, and the remnants of Draven's power faded away. Kylie's mind, honed by lifetimes of solitude and battle, recognized a truth she had long avoided. Connection was not weakness. Love, trust, and hope could coexist with strength. They were not mutually exclusive. They amplified each other. Kylie extended her hand to Chris, the violet glow of her armor casting a soft light over his face. Then we keep moving forward, together through whatever comes next. The stars are vast, the universe unforgiving, but we have each other. Chris grasped her hand firmly, a silent vow in the strength of his grip. Together, he echoed. Above them the sky cleared, revealing the endless expanse of stars. The labyrinth, once a place of terror and manipulation, lay in ruin but alive with quiet energy. The city, too, would recover, a testament to resilience, courage, and the unwavering bond between two souls who refused to yield. Kylie looked upward, violet eyes reflecting the constellations. "The galaxy is waiting," she whispered. "And now, we're ready." Chris stood beside her, sharing the gaze. Ready for anything. As the twin figures stepped from the ruins, their silhouettes illuminated by starlight and victory, one truth was undeniable. The fight had ended, but their journey, together, fearless, unbreakable, was only just beginning. In the aftermath, the universe seemed to exhale, and Kylie, for the first time in centuries, allowed herself to feel the simple, profound power of hope.